In a packed, suffocating courtroom, under the weight of a silence so heavy it seemed to pull the oxygen out of the air, a woman in a wheelchair prepared to do something that defied all human logic. Grace Sullivan, 38, former principal ballerina of the Metropolitan Theater, now completely paralyzed from the waist down, looked straight into the eyes of the man who had destroyed her life. Ethan Carter, 29, was being sentenced for drunk driving and causing the accident that left her paraplegic. The accident that killed her dreams and stole from her the one thing she knew how to do: dance. The judge asked if she wished to make a statement before sentencing. Grace took a deep breath and then said the words that made the entire courtroom freeze in time. "I forgive you, Ethan, completely, and I don't want you to go to prison." The prosecutor shot to his feet, outraged. The audience erupted in angry murmurs, and Ethan, the man who had shown zero remorse throughout the trial, who had even laughed when her injuries were described, stared at Grace as if she had lost her mind. But what she said next, the reason she forgave the unforgivable, made everyone in that room cry, including him, especially him. To understand how we reached this impossible moment, we need to go back 18 months, to a rainy Friday night when two lives collided in a way that would change everything. Grace was driving home from the theater after a triumphant performance of Swan Lake. At 37, she was considered too old for classical ballet by most standards, yet her talent was so undeniable that she remained the principal choice for lead roles. That night, she had received 5 full minutes of standing ovation. Major critics were in the audience. Her career, against all odds, was at its peak. She drove home humming Tchaikovsky, her legs still aching with that good, earned pain of hard work, thinking about her 12-year-old daughter who was waiting at home. Emily was everything to Grace. Ever since her husband had walked out when Emily was only 2, saying he hadn't married to live in the shadow of an obsessed ballerina, Grace had raised her daughter alone. Emily was her greatest gift, a sweet, studious girl who understood her mother's absences and watched every show from the front row with eyes full of pride. Grace stopped at a red light 2 blocks from home, lost in thoughts of the performance, when she saw headlights. Not normal headlights, but 2 white circles coming far too fast on the wrong side of the road. She had maybe 2 seconds to grasp what was happening. A car racing at insane speed, swerving wildly, heading straight for her. She tried to turn the wheel, but it was too late. The crash was so violent that the world exploded in glass, twisted metal, and pain. Pain so sharp and absolute, she couldn't even scream. Grace woke up 4 days later in the ICU. The first thing she saw was Emily's tear-swollen face holding her hand. "Mom, you're awake. Thank God you're awake." Grace tried to move and then realized she couldn't. She felt nothing below her waist, tried to move her legs, but it was as if they no longer existed. Panic rose in her throat like bile. "My legs! Emily! Why can't I feel my legs?" The girl broke into sobs and a nurse ran in calling for the doctor. Spinal cord injury, complete, irreversible. The neurologist's words hit Grace like stones. The T10 vertebra was completely crushed in the crash. "We did everything we could, but the damage is too severe. I'm sorry, Grace. You will not walk again." Something inside her died that day. She would never walk again, never dance again, never perform another perfect arabesque, never feel the adrenaline of a grand jeté, never hear the sound of her pointe shoes on stage. Everything. She had sacrificed everything for. Everything that defined her, stolen in 2 seconds by a drunk driver. When police finally spoke to her, they explained that the driver was a young man, 28, 3 times over the legal alcohol limit, with 2 prior DUI offenses. He had fled the scene and was arrested hours later, still drunk at a bar. For the first time in her life, Grace felt pure, crystalline hatred. She, who had always been kind and gentle, who had taught ballet for free on underprivileged kids on Saturdays, now found a rage inside her so deep it frightened her. The following months were the darkest of her life. Painful physical therapy that led to nowhere. Depression so severe she spent days without speaking. 12-year-old Emily forced to care for her mother. Savings gone, drained by medical bills. And above all, rage. Rage that consumed her when she saw people walking. Rage when dancers appeared on TV. Rage when she woke at night dreaming she still had legs, only for reality to strike again like a punch. Ethan's trial was scheduled for 10 months after the crash. She counted the days as if counting down to vengeance. She wanted to see him pay, to look in his eyes when the judge read the maximum sentence, to make him feel even a fraction of what she felt. But 2 weeks before the trial, something happened that would change everything. Something that rational, secular Grace could never explain, even if she tried. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Grace was home alone. Emily was at school. She had just taken her chronic pain medication and was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, lost in her usual emptiness, when suddenly she felt dizzy. Not the usual medication dizziness, something else. The room seemed to fill with a soft golden light that came from nowhere. Then she felt as though she was being lifted, not physically, but in some other way. She saw herself from above, lying in bed, and instead of fear, she felt an indescribable peace. Then she was somewhere else entirely. A place made of light and love so profound it overwhelmed her. There was no pain there, no wheelchair. She stood, not on physical legs, but whole, in a way that transcended the body. And in that place, she saw things. Her life from a new perspective, forgotten moments, and then something that froze her soul. A terrified 17-year-old girl, pregnant and alone, walking into a hospital. Giving birth to a baby boy after a difficult, lonely labor. Looking at him with love and despair, knowing she couldn't raise him. Signing adoption papers through tears, whispering, "Forgive me, forgive me," to the baby being taken away. She never knew who adopted him, never looked. She had built an entire life over that buried sorrow. Yet in this indescribable experience, dream, vision, or something beyond, she saw that boy's life unfold. Adopted by a couple who couldn't have children.
A childhood marked by a violent, alcoholic father. A youth devoid of affection, filled with trauma. A young man numbing his pain with alcohol. Drunk, driving that rainy night. And she saw his face clearly. Ethan. Ethan Carter was her son, the baby she had given up 29 years ago. Grace jolted back into her body so violently she fell from the bed. She lay on the floor shaking, sobbing, gasping for air. It couldn't be real, impossible, a trick of her mind, a drug reaction. But the more she tried to reason it away, the more certain she became, with a conviction deeper than logic. She didn't know it in her head, she knew it in her soul. Ethan was her son. The man who had paralyzed her, ruined her career, destroyed her life, was the child she had once loved and lost. For days she was in shock. She told no one, not even Emily. But secretly she investigated. Through a friend at the registry office, she found adoption records. A baby boy adopted 3 days after birth. Born at the same hospital on the same date. All details matched. She would never have legal proof. Adoptions then were sealed. But she didn't need papers. She knew. That revelation shattered her hatred. How could she hate him now? She had given him to a family that had hurt him. He had grown up lost, broken, never knowing a mother still loved him. Her anger melted into something else. Sorrow, compassion, and a maternal love she thought existed only for Emily. At the trial, Grace saw Ethan for the first time since the crash. He walked in handcuffed, arrogant, bored. He barely listened as experts described her permanent injuries, as colleagues testified through tears. Even when Emily, trembling, described taking care of her mother, Ethan just yawned. When he laughed during the prosecutor's closing argument, the courtroom exploded. The judge pounded the gavel. The prosecutor demanded contempt charges. But Grace watched him carefully and saw not cruelty, but defense. A man so broken that pretending not to care was the only way to survive. She recognized it. She had done the same the night she signed her son away, laughing hysterically in the cab because if she hadn't laughed, she would have never stopped crying. Then came sentencing. The prosecutor demanded the maximum. Ethan's tired public defender begged for leniency, and the judge turned to Grace. Everyone expected her to ask for justice, revenge. Instead, she asked to be wheeled to the microphone, looked straight at Ethan, and said, "I forgive you, Ethan, completely, and I don't want you to go to prison." Silence. Then chaos. Protests, disbelief. Ethan staring, bewildered. The judge restored order at last. "Mrs. Sullivan, I understand you're emotional, but Mr. Carter committed a serious crime. Sentencing is not the victim's decision." "I know," Grace said calmly, "but I needed to say aloud that I forgive him, because the hatred nearly destroyed me more than the accident ever did, and I don't want to carry it anymore." She turned to Ethan. "You took my legs, Ethan, my career, the life I knew. And for a long time, I wanted you to suffer like I did. But then God showed me something, that every person in this courtroom is more than the worst thing they've done. That you're not just a drunk driver. You're someone who's been hurt, who's broken, who uses alcohol to survive. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it makes you human. And I can't hate you, because," her voice faltered, "because I love you." Ethan blinked, stunned. "You don't even know me. Why would you love me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Because 29 years ago, I held a newborn baby in my arms for 3 hours. I was 17, terrified, and I loved that baby more than I thought possible. But I couldn't care for him. I signed adoption papers and never saw him again. And I've carried that pain every day since. 2 weeks ago, I had an experience I can't explain. Maybe it was God, maybe my broken mind. But I saw that baby growing up, suffering, and I saw his face. It was you, Ethan. You are my son." The room froze. The silence of the impossible. Ethan shook his head. "No, you're lying." "I don't expect you to believe me," Grace said softly. "The records are sealed. I can't prove it, but I know. And now I understand that this tragedy, as painful as it is, brought you back to me. Gave me the chance to say what I couldn't 29 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't raise you. I'm sorry for the pain you've lived. And I love you. I always have." Ethan trembled, tears flooding his face. "I was adopted," he muttered, "born March 14th, 1994, St. Mary's Hospital." Grace sobbed. "I know. I held you. You had a birthmark on your right shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon." Ethan pulled his shirt aside. The mark was there. Everyone saw it, and they began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the impossible was real. "For 29 years," Ethan whispered, "I wondered why my real mother didn't want me, why I wasn't good enough. I used that pain as an excuse to destroy my life, to drink, to not care. And now, you're telling me?" He broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Grace opened her arms. "Come here, my son, please." Ethan fell to his knees beside her wheelchair, laid his head on her lap, and she held him, stroking his hair, whispering over and over, "I love you. You have always been loved. You've always been enough. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The prosecutor cried. The judge wiped tears behind his glasses. Jurors openly wept. Emily stood watching, realizing she had just gained a brother in the most impossible way. Everyone had just witnessed something sacred: true forgiveness, unconditional love, redemption born of tragedy. When Ethan finally rose, he looked utterly transformed, arrogance gone, replaced by raw humility. He turned to the judge. "I accept full responsibility. I deserve prison. I ruined my own mother's life without knowing. Please give me the maximum sentence. I need to pay for what I did." The judge was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. "Mr. Carter, the law requires consequences for your crime. You changed another person's life forever. Yet, I'm also a father, and what I've witnessed today has changed my own understanding of justice. Justice is not only punishment, it's restoration. My sentence is this: 6 years in prison, eligible for parole after 3 upon completing alcohol treatment, therapy, and showing genuine rehabilitation. During incarceration, you may receive regular visits from Mrs. Sullivan and her family, should she wish. And once released, you will complete 2,000 hours of community service, speaking in schools about the dangers of drunk driving, so your mistake may save others." Ethan nodded, accepting. But Grace raised her hand. "Your Honor, may I ask one more thing? During his prison years, I'd like to visit him regularly. I want to get to know my son, and if he agrees, I want to introduce him to his sister. We lost 29 years. I don't want to lose another day." Ethan looked at her, half hope, half fear. "You really want that? After everything?"
"You're my son," Grace said simply. "I searched for you every day without knowing, and now, even through tragedy, I found you. You'll serve justice, but that's not who you are. I'll be here, every step, reminding you that you're loved." The next 3 years transformed them both. Grace visited every week. At first, conversations were awkward and stilted. Little by little, they opened up. Ethan spoke of beatings from his adoptive father, of feeling unwanted. Grace told him about her teen pregnancy, about pouring herself into ballet to fill the void. Emily also visited, hesitant at first, but gradually moved by her brother's change. She watched him complete rehab, take therapy seriously, mentor other inmates fighting addiction, finally show the remorse he had buried behind walls of denial. Grace, too, evolved. The wheelchair didn't vanish, but it stopped being a prison. She began teaching inclusive ballet classes for children and adults with physical disabilities, discovering joy she never imagined. Forgiving Ethan had freed her. Not just him, freed her from poison, bitterness, from the weight that had crushed her spirit. When Ethan was granted parole after 3 years, Grace was waiting. She and Emily had rented a house with an extra room. "It's yours," she told him, "if you want it, while you get back on your feet." Ethan wept, overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this? I destroyed you." "You didn't destroy me," Grace said gently. "You changed my path in painful ways, but you also brought me back my lost son and taught me what true forgiveness means. You showed me that God can redeem even the worst tragedies. You didn't destroy me, Ethan. Without meaning to, you saved me." Ethan found work, humble at first given his record, but he didn't give up. He completed his 2,000 hours of community service not as punishment, but as purpose. He visited schools, telling his story honestly, showing photos of Grace before the crash, radiant on stage, and after, in her chair. "This woman lost everything because of me, and she forgave me. She loves me. Every day I try to be a man worthy of that forgiveness." Students cried. Teachers requested replays of his talks. Statistics showed DUI incidents among students dropped by 40% in schools where he spoke. 5 years after the crash, Grace organized a charity event for her adaptive ballet school. Ethan helped arrange chairs and greet guests. When it was time for her speech, she rolled onto the stage and called Ethan and Emily to join her. "I'd like to introduce my family," Grace said into the microphone. "My daughter Emily, my rock through everything, and my son Ethan, whom I found again in the most painful, miraculous way. When the accident happened, I thought I'd lost everything, my legs, my career, my identity. And I would have, if I had chosen hatred. But God, in His infinite wisdom, showed me another path, that tragedy can be redeemed, pain can become purpose. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's the greatest act of strength possible." She looked at Ethan. "My son made a mistake that changed my life forever. But through that mistake, I found the boy I'd lost 29 years before. I learned that love is stronger than hate, forgiveness stronger than revenge, and redemption always possible." Tears streamed down Ethan's face. He took the microphone. "My mom talks about forgiveness as if it were easy. It wasn't. I saw her struggle during those first visits, but she chose love, even when hate would have been easier. That choice saved me. I was on a path to death, or worse, but my mother showed me I was worth more than my worst choices. Now I wake up every day trying to honor that forgiveness. I work with at-risk youth because I was one. I talk about alcohol's dangers because I lived them. And I love my mother and sister in ways I didn't know were possible. If there's one thing I want you to take from this tonight, it's that it's never too late to change. True forgiveness doesn't just free the forgiven, it frees the forgiver." The audience rose, applauding through tears. And in that moment, seeing her son whole, Emily embracing her brother, Grace felt something she hadn't felt since the crash. Wholeness. Not the kind measured by legs or applause, but of the soul. That night, after Emily had gone to bed and Ethan rested in his new room, Grace sat alone in her living room. She looked at the photos on the wall, her dancing Giselle,
her beaming on stage, baby Emily in her arms. New photos too. Grace and Ethan at the prison, awkward at first, then smiling genuinely. The three of them together, a family reborn. Her students in wheelchairs and prosthetics, dancing with unfiltered joy. And Grace understood something profound. The accident was no blessing. She'd never trivialized the pain, but God had woven redemption through tragedy, brought back a lost son, taught her unconditional love and forgiveness more deeply than ballet ever did, showed her that her identity was never in her legs, but in her heart. She closed her eyes and prayed, really prayed, for the first time in years, not for her legs back, but in gratitude. Grateful for the son she regained, the daughter who stood strong, the journey that broke and remade her, for the lesson learned in the hardest way. We are more than our bodies, more than our careers. We are the choices we make when everything is taken from us. And Grace chose love, chose forgiveness, chose life. In his room, Ethan looked at a photograph Grace had given him as a newborn, in the arms of a 17-year-old girl, gazing at him as if he were his entire universe. His biological mother in their only moment together before 29 years apart. He touched the photo and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me. Not then, when you gave me a chance at life through adoption. Not now, when I didn't deserve forgiveness. I'll spend the rest of my life earning the love you gave me." And for the first time in memory, Ethan Carter slept in peace. Have you ever forgiven someone who hurt you deeply? Ever been forgiven when you didn't deserve it? Grace's story reminds us that forgiveness isn't saying the wrong didn't matter. It's choosing love despite it. It's remembering that people are more than their worst moments. Grace lost her legs but found her son, lost her career but found her purpose, and taught us all that redemption is always possible. If this story touched you, if it made you rethink forgiveness, share it with someone who needs to know it's never too late to start again. Because here on Destined Lives, we don't tell stories just to move you. We tell them to remind you miracles happen, love wins, and you can always choose to be better than you were yesterday. Until the next story, remember, you are not defined by the worst thing you've done or the worst thing done to you. You are defined by what you choose to do after.